Good afternoon to everybody. We want to thank Orit Sibulka for sponsoring the Dvar Torah, and it's in the honor of her 76th birthday. And if you look, Orit, first we want to wish you a Mazal Tov. You should have a lot of simcha and nachas in the future. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Mishalot Libayich L'Tovah. And by the way, you look at the Tehillim, number 76, which is parallel to your birthday. So it speaks about that in the end there will be a milchama of Gog and Magog, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, well, there'll be destruction all over, but in Eretz Israel there'll be HaKadosh Baruch Hu's there will be peace, there'll be protection, and it says over there in the Tehillim, Vayehi b'shalem sukkah umonato b'tzion. It says that Hashem will cause his tabernacle, his sukkah, or his mishkan to be in Shalem. Shalem is Yerushalayim, and his dwelling, umonato b'tzion, will be in Tzion. So actually, the Vilna Gaon, he used to, since there's a tradition that the war of Gog and Magog will take place during the time of Sukkot, he used to say that this is the Mizmor. This Mizmor of Tehillim has to be recited on Sukkot. But B'kitzur, we wish you that you manage to make Aliyah and to be over here. We're so happy with you in our congregation. We hope that you'll always be Zocheh to the divine protection over here in Yerushalayim and in Sion, you and Menashe and all your family. We end off the Parshiot of the book of Shmot with the Parshiot of Vayakel-Pekudei, which speaks about the final construction of the Mishkan. And there's so many expressions in the Torah which speaks about the people's tremendous generosity in bringing to the Mishkan. There's expressions, for example, the Torah says that there were people who were Nedivei Lev. Nedivei Lev are people whose heart is motivated. There were people who were Nesa'o Libo, that their heart was lifted, it was elevated. There were people that Nadva Rucho, that their spirit was, they had a sense of inspiration. I mean, they didn't just give. What they did was they gave with such enthusiasm, with such inspiration, with such, as it says over again, the Div Levo, the Sa'or Libo, a tremendous, stirring description of how people already fought to give anything that was precious and dear and necessary for the building of the Mishkan. And suddenly, the Torah tells us something mamash incredible. I think that this might be actually, in a way, the climax of the whole matter of the generosity of and the greatness of the people. The Torah says that people came to Moshe and they said, you know what, we've got so much, that the people are bringing so much that we can't manage anymore. So what does Moshe do? He sends out a proclamation and he says to the people, everyone, we've got enough and stop giving. And the Torah tells us that the people stopped giving. Remember that Rabbi Rivlin and Ken Ben used to say, now can you imagine a person, there's a long queue. There's 500 people in the queue. He's waiting with his, he's got like a little pocket of like gold coins or silver coins. He's so enthusiastic over here to come and to give it. Maybe his gold, his silver will be part of the Aron HaKodesh, will be part, it will melt it down, it will be part of the menorah. And he gets to the kupai, he gets to the clerk, he's about to give him his silver and gold, and suddenly, sorry, it says over here, this booth is now shut. Now we're not accepting any more donations. Well, can you imagine how the person felt? And yet the Torah says that that's it. No one complained. The language in the Torah is Vayakel-Pekudei ha'am mehavi. The people, they stopped bringing. Let's just first of all raise a couple of questions and try to explain a little bit this. Why couldn't they take what people had now really so much wanted to give? Why couldn't they put it in a storeroom? Why couldn't they store it? I mean, it's no big deal to travel through the Midbar with a Mishkan and then to travel within an extra amount of wagons which would store for future use, future generations, all that people donated to the Mikdash. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to now tell the people, you know what, that's it, you must stop bringing. No one, we don't want any more donations to the Mishkan. I mean, the people wanted to give. Usually people raising money have got the opposite problem. So there's two approaches to this matter. One approach that has to do between man and man, one between man and God. Rabbeinu Bechaya says that the man-to-man aspect is that the Torah is telling us is that we must be very, very careful when it comes to communal funds. And therefore, when there is some sort of drive, when there's some sort of collection, when there's some sort of raising for some sort of goal, the funds, once it has been reached, the project, the amount needed for the project has been reached, that's it. You're not allowed to now store any more funds. You're not allowed to have extra. You're not allowed to waste the community's money. So therefore, we don't really have so much of that problem. But that's the principle. The principle, if the community has called on a certain project, once the amount of money for that particular project has been reached, now what you have to do is you have to say, we've reached our goal, and now to put a stop. There will always be other projects. But that's what Rabbeinu Bechaya says, as Moshe Rabbeinu said, we had now a goal. The goal was to build a Beit HaMikdash. We've got enough material. We've got enough precious stones. The artisans don't need any more. We're not going to do more than HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. There's a certain architectural demand. There's a certain quantity that we have to do. Once we've reached that, so that's it. That's the first matter that the Torah teaches us. The second matter is that sometimes not to give is to give. And the point over here is Dafka, when they wanted so much to give, Moshe Rabbeinu, on the one hand, what he did was he accepted. And on the other hand, what he did was he didn't accept. He said, from now on, it's enough. And I want to read out to you from a book. This is a book over here on Rabbi Soloveitchik's essays. It's the second book edited by Rabbi Bezdin, The Man of Faith in the Modern World. And it's on page 157. Rabbi Soloveitchik is speaking about Hakafot and how there's, on Hakafot, what does it teach us? This movement of Hakafot. What we do is, when we go in circles in our kafot, we go there's it's a planetary type of movement. There's a movement outward, and then there's the center of gravity, which in the case of Simchat Torah is the altar, and that pulls the person in. So what is it teaching us? Rabbi Soloveitchik says like this. The question is asked, since God is infinite and encompassing all, how could God create a finite world extraneous to himself? If God is everywhere, so where is there room for a finite world? So he says the Luranic Kabbalah, the Kabbalah of the Ari, answers that God retreated in order to make room for a finite world. In other words, he contracted, so to speak, himself. We don't really know what we're saying, but we'll read that, carry on. He metaphorically withdrew out of his love for man and for the world. Soloveitchik carries on. This doctrine of tzimtzum means to contract. So God contracted himself to make room for the world, a finite physical world. So says this doctrine of tzimtzum has moral relevance to man, is the foundation of our morality. If God withdrew and creation as a result of his withdrawal, then guided by the principle of imitating Hashem, we are called upon to do the same. Jewish ethics calls upon us in certain situations to engage in self-limitation and recoil from the full range of options available to us in life. So what we've learned over here is that when the Mishkan, which is a replica of creation, so a replication of man, replication of the world, there's lots of symbolism in the Mishkan. So just like the world was brought into creation by two opposite movements. Hashem withdrew within himself to make room for another, for the world, a finite world. And then Hashem sort of gave. He said, let this be, let that be. Right? As we say, Olam Chesed Yibaneh. In the Mishkan, there were these two groups of people. Without the Mishkan, couldn't have been built. There were those who gave and those who didn't give. And the not giving, right, that withdrawal, that restraint, which is such an important part in Halakha, in Judaism, that as Rav Soloveitchik said it in his beautiful words, that we are drawn to the altar, we have to sacrifice, we don't always have to pursue all the options that are given to us. That is what made the Mishkan. And if you look at the words of the Torah, when it says that the Jewish people didn't come, so you can see there in the pasuk it says Vayakel-Pekudei ha'am mehavi. The word for that they stopped bringing is Vayakel-Pekudei. Vayakel-Pekudei is written Kaf Lamed Aleph. Modern Hebrew, Kaf Lamed Aleph is also, and it's connected to it, it's like a prison, a kele. Vayakel-Pekudei ha'am. The people, and this has showed their real motivation, the Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven. No ego involved over here. Vayakel-Pekudei, they jailed themselves, so to speak. They put themselves in jail. Can you imagine how difficult it must have been for those people who knew now that they couldn't give? But Hashem saying that was the greatness. The Mishkan was made, just like the world was made. Hashem could have carried on created. No, he created for 6 days. The 7th day he rested. So there were those people who did give, and those people then who were like Hashem. The 7th day they rested. They didn't give. And that's the greatness in those people who didn't give. We saw that looking at Klal Yisrael as a whole, so the people, we see how much the Jewish people gave for the sake of the mitzvah of the Mishkan and not from themselves. That's the greatness of why the Mishkan actually lasted forever. It never ever fell into enemy hands. So Shabbat Shalom lekulam, happy Adar, and happy Rosh Chodesh, and happy Chodesh Nisan. Right? These are great times. Bezrat Hashem, things I'm sure are going to come back to normal and better. All the best.